Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
So during that turbulent 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran, something really striking happened. June 23rd, 2025, a targeted airstrike on Evin Prison in Tehran.
Yeah, Evin. A
Yep.
place with a chilling reputation internationally.
Exactly. And the whole incident is just shrouded in mystery, lots of contention.
Definitely.
So what actually happened that day? And, what does it tell us? About the geopolitics, sure, but also about what's going on inside Iran.
Well, that's precisely what we want to get into in this deep dive for you, the listener.
Okay.
We're going to try and peel back the layers, look at the prison's history, which is pretty troubling, the different stories about the strike itself.
The conflicting narratives. Yeah.
Exactly. And how it all fits into the bigger Iran-Israel conflict, and importantly, the impact it had, sometimes in really unexpected ways, on Iranian society, on the leadership.
Right.
We'll try to blend the key facts with some crucial insights to give you a clear picture. Cut through the noise a bit.
Good. So when we talk about this strike, Evin Prison itself, it's more than just concrete and bars, isn't it? It's this huge symbol.
Absolutely. Its very existence tells a story. Evin, it's in Tehran, established back in 1972 under the Shah.
Okay, pre-revolution.
Right.
Yeah.
But it gained this immense infamy after the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Our sources call it the Islamic Republic's most infamous detention facility.
And who ends up there? What's its main purpose?
Its primary purpose, really, is housing those the regime finds problematic. We're talking political prisoners, journalists, academics, human rights activists.
And usual suspects for an authoritarian regime.
Pretty much. Also, dual nationals and foreign citizens accused of espionage or propaganda offenses. And the methods used there aren't just about locking people up.
Yeah.
No, they seem designed for maximum psychological impact. To break people down, silence dissent. It creates this fear that goes way beyond the prison walls.
And it's known internationally, but not for good reasons. It's linked to some truly awful things.
That's putting it mildly. Even has a dark, documented history of systematic human rights abuses.
Like what specifically?
Well, reports detail horrific stuff. Beatings, electric shocks, mock executions,
Just brutal.
prolonged solitary confinement, forced confessions, sleep deprivation, and sexual abuse.
Yeah.
There are these really harrowing allegations, too, like deliberately denying medical care to female political prisoners.
Unbelievable.
And it's not new. Sources mention a widespread history of rape and torture going back decades. There were even internal acknowledgments.
Really? Within the Iranian system?
Yes, back in 1986, Ayatollah Khomeini's own deputy, Hussein Ali Montazeri, wrote him a letter asking essentially, did you know young women are being raped in some prisons of the Islamic Republic?
Wow. So even at the highest levels, there was some awareness.
It seems so. All this reinforces why it's often called Iran's Bastille.
Yeah.
It really symbolizes the regime's absolutist rule and intolerance of dissent.
So when these kinds of abuses surface, what's the international response? You mentioned human rights groups.
Right. It means consistent, strong condemnation. You've got Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the UN Special Rapporteur, all repeatedly calling out these practices.
And does that translate into action? Or is it just words?
Sometimes it does lead to tangible action. For instance, just in April 2025, the EU sanctioned Evin's director, Hidayatollah Farzadi.
Sanctioned him personally?
Yes, for his direct responsibility for severe human rights violations. The U.S. also put him on their SDN list, the Specially Designated Nationals list.
And what does that mean practically for him?
Well, for you listening, it basically means his assets under U.S. jurisdiction are frozen, and U.S. individuals or companies are generally prohibited from dealing with him. It's a way to isolate individuals financially on the world stage.
Okay, so that's the grim backdrop of Evin Prison. Now let's zero in on the actual event, the June 23rd airstrike. There was footage circulating almost immediately, right? Showing the impact.
Yes, quite dramatic footage. Now, Israel's version of events, according to their military, was that this was a symbolic strike on the front gate.
Symbolic
Meaning intended to avoid harming the imprisoned people. Their stated goal was hitting regime targets and government repression bodies in the heart of Tehran.
So the idea was to disrupt the regime's ability to repress and maybe show solidarity with protesters.
That was the stated objective, yes. To disrupt capacity and show solidarity.
But Iran's official story paints a very different picture.
Starkly different. The Iranian judiciary reported a much heavier toll. They claimed at least 71 people were killed.
71?
They listed staff, soldiers, prisoners, and visiting family members. They also said the strike hit the administrative building, the medical center, and visiting rooms. So definitely not just symbolic from their perspective.
That's a massive discrepancy.
Yeah.
And then there's this other really strange element, the story about the warden escaping beforehand.
Ah, yes, that adds another layer of intrigue. Here's where it gets really interesting. A Fox News report came out citing an Israeli intelligence source and supposedly leaked messages.
Okay, what did it allege?
It alleged that the warden, Hedayatollah Farzadi, the same one sanctioned by the EU and US, fled just minutes before the strike hit.
Fled. How, did they say?
The report claimed there was a secret warning from Israeli authorities, apparently sent via WhatsApp to his son, Amir Husseini Farzadi.
A WhatsApp message warning? Seriously?
That's the allegation. The message supposedly urged the son to tell his father to release political prisoners to save his own life.
And the claim is the son passed it on.
Reportedly, yes. The story goes the son told his uncle, who then rushed to the prison and got Farzadi out right before the bombs fell.
That sounds like something out of a spy novel. How did Iran react to that specific claim?
They flatly denied it. The Iranian judiciary dismissed the Fox News report entirely. Their counter-narrative was that Farzadi was actually inspecting the prison wards at the time of the strike.
So one side says he fled after a secret warning. The other says he was on duty inside.
Exactly. And this isn't just about getting the facts wrong. This is classic information warfare. Each side pushes a narrative to boost its own credibility and undermine the other. It makes it incredibly difficult for anyone, including you listening, to figure out what's true in the fog of war.
It really does. Okay, let's zoom out again. This strike on Evin didn't happen in a vacuum. It was part of that larger, intense 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran starting June 13th.
Precisely. You have to see it in that context. The conflict escalated quickly.
Yeah.
Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israeli cities.
A major escalation.
Huge. Israel then retaliated with over 145 airstrikes. They hit nuclear sites like Natanz, Fordow, Isfahan,
Yeah.
but also military facilities and internal security targets.
Probably the Besiege headquarters.
Yes, the Besiege HQ, Sayed al-Shohada Corps, Police Intelligence HQ, and then the U.S. got directly involved militarily on June 22nd.
With bunker busters, right? What exactly are those?
Right. Bunker busters are specialized bombs designed to penetrate deep underground or hit hardened targets. Using them signaled an escalation, likely targeting Iran's buried nuclear or command facilities.
And this all led to a ceasefire.
A fragile one, yeah. Brokered by the U.S. on June 24th.
Looking at the overall human cost of those 12 days, what were the numbers outside the prison strike itself?
The numbers are grim. As of June 24th, Iran reported 4,746 injured and 610 killed. That included 49 women and 13 children.
And on the Israeli side?
Israel reported 3,238 injured or hospitalized and 28 killed.
So significant casualties on both sides. Now, you mentioned a consequence of this conflict was Iran cracking down internally after the ceasefire.
Yes, that's a critical point. Regimes under external pressure often use the situation as cover to tighten their grip domestically.
What did that crackdown look like on the ground for ordinary Iranians?
We saw reports of mass arrests, reported executions, increased military deployments, and much heightened surveillance, particularly in Kurdish areas.
How did the surveillance work?
Well, there were accounts of security officers setting up pop-up checkpoints, stopping people, demanding to check their phones, their messaging apps, looking for anything deemed sensitive content.
That must create a pervasive sense of fear.
Absolutely. A deep sense of fear, as sources described it. Human rights groups like HRNA documented hundreds of arrests, 705 people on political or security charges just since the war started. Many were accused of spying for Israel.
And executions, too.
Tragically, yes. Reports indicated 3 executions, believed to be of Kurdish individuals, were carried out on June 25th in Urmia, right after the ceasefire.
You'd think all this external pressure and internal crackdown would fuel more opposition to the regime, but you mentioned something paradoxical.
Yes, this is where it gets really fascinating and perhaps counterintuitive. Some sources suggest a strengthening of regime support, or what political scientists call a rallying around the flag effect.
Rallying around the flag, even among people critical of the government.
Apparently, yes. Some Iranians, even those who dislike the regime, reportedly shifted their tone. They started to see the Israeli actions not as targeting the regime, but as an unprovoked and unjustified war against Iran, the nation.
So the external threat unified people, at least temporarily.
It seems it might have, for some. It suggests that external military pressure, even if, say, intended to weaken a regime or encourage dissent, can sometimes backfire. It can consolidate national sentiment and give the regime the perfect excuse for even tougher internal crackdowns.
That's a really complex dynamic. So pulling these threads together, the Evin strike highlights its enduring role, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Evin remains this potent symbol of the Islamic Republic's apparatus of repression. And it's constantly under the spotlight for international human rights concerns.
And there's another angle, too, regarding foreign detainees.
Yes, that's crucial. Iran has this controversial, long-standing practice of using foreign or dual national detainees as political bargaining chips.
Hostage diplomacy, basically.
That's what critics call it. And Evin is central to this. We have recent examples right from our sources. Cecilia Sala, an Italian journalist, detained late 2024, released early 2025. Olivier Ventecastile, a Belgian aid worker, released in a prisoner swap in May 2023. Johan Flederis, a Swedish diplomat, arrested way back in April 2022.
So it's an ongoing pattern, using people as leverage.
A clear pattern, yes, leveraging human lives in high-stakes international negotiations.
Does the focus on Evin and documenting what happens there raise hopes for future accountability?
That's certainly a possibility people talk about. There's potential for future accountability for perpetrators of the abuses inside Evin. For instance, there was a book published in 2022 called White Torture.
White Torture?
Yes, it documents prisoner experiences and even names specific interrogators. Material like that could become crucial evidence in legal proceedings down the line, especially if there's ever a regime change or transitional justice process in Iran. It builds a record.
It keeps the memory alive and creates a basis for potential justice. But amidst all the geopolitics, the intelligence games, the symbolism, we have to remember the human cost.
Absolutely vital. We need to bring it back to the everyday experience, the profound impact on ordinary Iranians.
You mentioned a Tehran resident, Zion. What did they describe?
They described the palpable fear, people rushing to flee major cities during the bombing raids, this feeling of having no support from the authorities. It underscores that these aren't just abstract events. They deeply affect real lives, causing immense fear and uncertainty.
That human element is just crucial to keep in mind.
It really is. It reminds us that behind the headlines and the strategic calculations, there are individuals and families navigating these incredibly difficult, frightening circumstances.
So to recap for everyone listening, we've looked at Evin Prison not just as a place, but as this heavy symbol of oppression. We've explored the clashing stories around the June 23rd airstrike, put it in the context of the wider, intense Iran-Israel conflict, and touched on the real, sometimes unexpected consequences for Iranians themselves, like that rallying around the flag phenomenon.
Right. And reflecting on all this really brings up a key question, something for you to think about.
Okay, what's that?
What does this whole complex incident at Evin Prison truly reveal? What does it tell us about how international intelligence operations, the stated goals of military strikes, and the actual, often tragic, human and political results on the ground, how they all interact?
How external actions ripple inwards.
Exactly. How do those external pressures actually reshape the internal dynamics of a country like Iran? And maybe, what lasting lessons can we draw from this tangled web of conflict, repression, and international intervention?
That's a heavy question, but a really important one. We definitely encourage you, our listeners, to keep exploring these critical issues, thinking about the many layers of global events, and especially how they impact the lives of people caught in the middle.